This is the Self-Employed Mum podcast, the raw, honest truths of what it takes to be a mum and an entrepreneur. Running a business while raising small humans is an entirely different ballgame, and if you, like me, are in the thick of it right now, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Rhiannon Loudon, mom of two, proud entrepreneur, and CEO of two small businesses. And my guests, women who are juggling all the plates, building businesses while raising the next generation. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, follow, and spread the word to help keep this podcast going. Now on to today's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Self-Employed Mum podcast. This week, I am joined by April Blake, a naturopathic doctor who has moved over to Scotland all the way from sunny California. April is also a home birth midwife, and she is essentially an expert in all things women's health. So I'm super excited to speak to April today because this stuff is really top of mind for me and for pretty much all of you. So hi, April.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. It's so nice to chat with you. So can you walk us through a little bit about what you do? What is a naturopathic doctor, and how did you get into that?
Yes, thank you. Well, so naturopathic medicine in the United States is actually, we get trained as primary care providers, which is a GP. And so we are trained to diagnose and prescribe medication, pharmaceuticals, but our background is really trying to understand the root cause. So we're always trying to understand like what's underlying that condition. So, if you're looking something like hypothyroid, then I'm not just going to think, oh, you just need thyroid replacement. We're actually going to look at why did that happen. So are there nutrients that you're deficient in? What's going on with your microbiome? What are your genetic predispositions? What's going on with your adrenal glands? What toxins have you been exposed to? All of those factors really contribute. So we're really taught to kind of think about the body in a very like holistic way. It's all, everything is connected. It's like seeing a whole bunch of specialists all in one. And so I came to this medicine because I was sick. My whole life, since I was 2 months, I had horrible eczema and it covered my body. I went to all these doctors growing up. I used to bleed through my clothes. It was so bad. I had horrible IBS also and lots of anxiety because of it. And I was actually going to be a foreign diplomat and I was going to represent the United States government. I studied political science, international relations, anthropology, and I thought that's what I'm going to do. I was raised by a single mom who headed the Democratic Party in the state of California. So that was my world. I just did political events and I liked it. I liked to be able to change the world, right? Like that. I've always had that kind of like mission, like for the good, for the greater good. So I was doing that. I even like went to Italy and studied there because that's the best school. I was going to go to Georgetown. I was on this whole other track. and then I finally met a naturopathic doctor who came up to me at a party and saw my skin and was like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is fine. I've done all the things. I do the creams. It doesn't. It's my life, right?" She's like, "No, no, no. You could definitely get rid of this. Like we could have a conversation." So I met with her for like a day. Like she was just so kind and she just really explained about the nervous system, about toxins, about the gut and how it all linked together. And I started doing everything she said and I got better for the first time in my life. And it was like, oh my, I could not believe it. I just thought that was my life, pain and suffering and bleeding. And so that was the summer I actually graduated with my undergraduate degree. And then I thought, wait a minute, I think I have to be a doctor. Like this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to change the world. Because it is a very political thing to do. This isn't, I have to come against conventional medicine every single day, multiple times a day, usually, and explaining what it is. And, so anyway, I went back to school, became a naturopath. We have medical schools in the United States for naturopathic medicine. It is science-based. It is all controlled, double-blind. We have experiments that we do have evidence for the things that we use. If it's alternative, if it's natural, if it's an herbal or vitamin supplement. And typically we're trying to use natural things. So we're trying to use the diet and lifestyle changes. We're working on the nervous system first and foremost. a lot of times when you're in kind of a chronic state, your body has the message that it's just not safe. Like the world might maybe isn't safe for some reason. So you kind of stay in this kind of triggered fight or flight mode. And that's kind of the heart of a lot of chronic illness. So we kind of excel at chronic illness, I would say, because of that. Because we kind of look at, where not just, your physical body, but we're also treating the mental body, energetic body, just really looking at all these pieces. So anyway, I became a naturopath 17 years ago, 18 years. I've been practicing 17 years now. And my first job, I worked in a primary care group in San Francisco, and they hired me as their first naturopathic doctor to teach medical doctors about natural medicine. So my background is pretty unique, and then I was able to kind of blend, like really see how they're thinking about medicine, just like firsthand. So I taught those doctors for 10 years about adrenals, hormones. Mostly they brought me in as a midwife so they could really get some help with women's health, because generally they just put women on birth control. If you have any issue, that's the one solution. So I was there to teach them that actually you could look at the whole person. How about that? You could look at all the different layers, and there's so many different things that can help for women. So I was there 10 years, and then 7 years ago, I came out of that practice. It's called One Medical, and opened my own clinic, and it's in the Bay Area in San Rafael, California, actually. And then my dream was always to live in Scotland. So I came over here in 2021, and now I have a beautiful clinic in Edinburgh on Broughton Street. It's right in the center. So, and now I'm doing it here. I'm bringing this natural medicine to the UK. So that's my intention. It's going to take a while for educating. I think people don't really understand what it is. I mean, it's even in the US. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, I come from California, everyone knows. And that's not exactly true. It is definitely changing, but it's changing. There's much more interest now, especially since COVID. People are really wanting to have alternatives. So yeah.
I mean, this topic is so front of mind for me because it's not really something I've spoken about before on the podcast, but I've had issues with hormones my whole life. I ended up finally getting diagnosed with PCOS when I was in my kind of early to mid 20s. When some blood tests were finally taken, and they could see that there was something going on. But when you said, I was smiling away to myself when you said the thing about everybody just throws birth control, traditional medicine, that's what they do. And that that most women with PCOS, I think with endometriosis, any kind of hormonal issue, that's always the first thing. I'll just go on birth control. And I think, obviously you'll know much more about this than me, but for me, it really just masks some of the symptoms. So yes, it can help improve some of the symptoms, but you're never getting to the underlying problem. And maybe I'm simplifying this, but in my experience, it has very much felt like traditional medicine has really been like a band-aid fix. It's like, we'll take this and it'll help with a few of the things that you're complaining about. But the idea of actually getting to the root cause of this, and that there is a way to, whether or not, you can cure whatever the issue is, there is a way to make your day-to-day life more manageable that isn't just taking a pill that has loads of other side effects that you don't want, is amazing to me. So I think this is such a great
100%.
conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to bad talk the conventional medicine. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful that exists too, because people suffer, and I really want people to get, like, it's nice to have that, where we can have that, but also just knowing, I think that is the re-education, like, because these do come with side effects. They're powerful medications, and it's not something you just want to like, oh, I'll just take that the rest of my life. They're not being fully educated when you get on something. Like when you start a birth control medicine, it always decreases your B12 vitamins, your vitamin D, your magnesium, folic acid. So every woman that starts it should be on a multivitamin also. But that's not what we do. It's just like you just start that, and then pretty soon you become deficient, and then all of a sudden you've got anemia. And you're thinking, is it because of my periods? Usually it's actually because of the birth control.
Right.
Or they even could develop, depression, anxiety, numbness, tingling. These are B12 deficiency symptoms. And these can be from just the birth control. So it's just something to keep in mind, and I think I just love that. Yeah, we can do both. So we look at underlying cause, and, so I might just, I want people to get out of pain or suffering as quickly as possible. So we might use like a pharmaceutical. Sometimes, well, it's pretty rare that I would do the birth control pill, but maybe if it's extreme, but like usually I'm getting everyone off. But but then I would be looking at, what can we do to like really, remedy the situation? Like with PCOS, this is a blood sugar. It predisposes you for diabetes, right? So
Yeah.
that's really what you have to be thinking about with the inflammation and your immune system, and you're thinking about blood sugar. So really that's once you start getting your adrenal glands and your blood sugar really dialed in, then the hormones can normalize. That's literally what can happen. So it's just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I think what I love about what you're saying too is I have felt very much like there's not a lot of support out there, like in terms of whatever's offered with conventional medicine, in my own experience. I have quite a
Mhm.
few friends or other women that I've worked with who are dealing with things like endometriosis. One of my friends has been diagnosed with early stages of MS and things like that. And it seems like anything to do with women's health very often just gets brushed under the rug. And especially when it's hormones, I feel like the attitude is very much it's just hormones. But maybe you
Mhm.
can speak a little bit to how much hormones really affect us, and how that differentiates from our male counterparts, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the biggest difference between a male and a female body actually is those levels of hormones. So, and it's basically what bathes your brain. There's studies on this now. So, men are bathed in testosterone; their brains are just bathed in that. We have basically the equivalent of estrogen in our brains as they do testosterone, and they're very different. They basically have different effects on the body. So an estrogen drenched brain is going to be able to multitask, is going to be able to think about things in very nuanced little ways and keep the placeholders and um, be able to handle that kind of stress. And a testosterone driven brain or bathed brain is going to be much more unidirectional. It's just very focused and it just thinks about one thing at a time and cannot think about other things. And this is like something we say, like a stereotype, right? But it actually, this is very true. It is actually what happens when they look at the different brains. And then it has different repercussions for your muscles and your tissues and your heart and every single system. We have over 100 receptors in the body for estrogen. So it does affect every single cell in our body. And so you can imagine when you go into peri-menopause or menopause, then that is going to affect every single system in the body. So we will notice changes. It's a big deal. Like your vision can change. Even you can start snoring, and like your secretions can get thicker. Um, your digestion can slow down. Your joints can start to feel a little different. But often I guess I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about going into menopause, but um, I'm just going to say that when you do, I think it's an unmasking. What happens when we go into like perimenopause is like things that were already there, things that maybe you hadn't looked at, or maybe infections that you hadn't addressed, or toxins that maybe were in the body, or traumas that, were in the body will kind of come up because you don't have that estrogen anymore to help you kind of calibrate in the same way that you did before. So when those levels go way down, then all of a sudden you're noticing a lot more issues. It's very different. You're like, well, this is a whole different body, and it is kind of like a metamorphosis. It's like coming out of a cocoon. It's
And
a
this
whole.
is one of those things that we all have to go through, or at some point in our life. You don't get to pick and choose. That is something that we all have to go through. And obviously not everybody is able to or chooses to have children, but even
Mhm.
the effects of that, like, I mean, I've had two children now, and I do sometimes feel like a completely different person. I don't know if that has any, obviously there's the day-to-day changes in your life, but even physically I
Oh
feel
yeah,
so different now. And I feel like women just go through so many of these big hormonal things in their lives, and that does make it really hard when you're trying to build a career or trying to build a business, but you're also having to navigate all of these mood swings, all of these physical effects. I don't know if you can speak a little bit to that in terms of
hmm
yeah, just about the sort of day-to-day effects, even if we're not in a perimenopausal or menopausal
yeah,
or pregnant, or how does that all affect
yeah.
our day-to-day?
Well, I like to think of it as like a superpower because this is, I mean, it really is. I think we need to change the language when we're talking about it because it has been so historically negative. So I like to think of it in terms of like the moon cycle. So when we, I like it because we live on this planet and it kind of gives us more in touch with nature and kind of gets us slowing down. So kind of looking up at the moon, because the moon actually has a 28 to 30-day cycle, just like our menstrual cycle every single month. And when it's a dark moon, that's the time that generally you're going to be shedding your lining. That typically most women are they're either going to be bleeding on the dark moon, or we call it the new moon, or on the full moon. Some women will be. It's either those 2 weeks, because there's 2 weeks apart from each one. Um, so basically, when you're in the shedding phase, that's a time of just restoration, replenishing, nourishing your body. It's a time. It's like reminding you to have more self care and just being more like inner and just being more quiet. And so you can just be more gentle with yourself during that time, and just make sure that you are nourishing yourself. And it is, there is a lot more sensitivity, I think, for women. We have a lot more because of estrogen, first and foremost, because we have a very different brain, like because of the estrogen. So we have different sensitivities and we are able to think multidirectionally and be very, like, we can be very passionate with our energy too. I think in a very different way than a testosterone based brain. And so what I guess I'm talking about is if you're going through life and you're a female body, then you're going to be wanting to just pay attention to like, okay, I need to take some time for myself this week. I need to slow it down, even though I might have all these things that are coming at me. I need to maybe integrate more, maybe a 5-minute meditation every day. Maybe I need to definitely make sure I go for a walk, and look at the sky, so I can know that I'm here and I'm okay, but it does take that extra bit of just attention, I think, to give yourself, because I think we do rush through it, and these changes are happening every single week in a female body. Mm-hmm. And then after that first week of the bleed, then you go into getting ready for the ovulation, which is typically you're going to have much more energy, you're going to have more focus, more drive. That's a time to really work on your projects, to really think about, what do I want to manifest? Maybe maybe you want to do a podcast, maybe you want to launch something for your brand, or that's a good time to kind of think about when you want to give a talk. Basically, that's also a great time. I'm actually ovulating right now. I'm in that spot right now. So it's like, I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, that's right. And then usually the week after the ovulation. So usually then we come into the energy of the full moon, and that's when you're manifesting. You're really, showing, you can really show up fully. We would say more like a testosterone driven brain, I guess, because that one is much more like focused, just one mind. And then you're starting to come down the mountain a bit. So that next week, you're going to be still having the effects of the motivation and the drive, but then just wanting to be a little more tender with yourself again. Mm-hmm. And then I actually want to say too, like, there is an idea too around, I wanted to just about the intermittent fasting and diet piece. That's such a fad right now. And it can be really good for us, especially, I mean, women, we're trying to take in less sugar, less calorie, if you're trying to like manage your weight, especially with the new year and everything. There is a timing that's best for that. So you don't want to do intermittent fasting generally. Usually, let's think of it like the third week of your cycle. Like, so day 1 is the first day of your period, and day 21 would be when you want to stop intermittent fasting. And then you could basically, you don't want to fast when you're on your period, but then you could like take it up. So like typically women are okay with doing something like a 12 to 15-hour fast, from like day 3 or 4 when they stop bleeding to day 21. So I just wanted to like put that in there, because that's really important to know, I think, these days, because it can be really effective. But you just want to make sure that that's part of nourishing yourself, so that you can actually eat enough calories so you can have a good period and better hormones. But anyway, back to the week before the period, right? When women are typically feeling that rush of hormone, because what's happening, we say it's a rush, but it's actually, you are getting a bit of a peak again of estrogen and progesterone, but then they come down. They come down about 2 days before your period. And that down for some women is very extreme, and they can feel really like out of sorts and just want to cry and be irritable and, on edge. But I think it's also a different way to say is superpower, because that's when the filter comes off. And that's when you actually can really express your truth. Because maybe there's some real truths that need to come out, that you don't really get a chance to talk about or really say, or maybe you're too shy or timid or something. But so I just want to say that, like, check in with yourself. If you are a woman that's having the PMS symptoms, like, is this a true thing that needs to be shared? And if it is, then share it. But if it's not, then just know where you are in your cycle. I think that's really big too, just like paying attention to where you are, because then you can say, okay, this is actually estrogen, progesterone, they're starting to drop, and I might need a little more support. So I might need to go out into nature more, and I might need to nourish myself more with maybe taking a bath or eating more nuts and seeds. You need more fat for these hormones. So you really want to integrate more, like avocados and butter, organic butter, olive oil, the nuts and seeds like nut butters, um, and protein. You need a lot more protein too. So just make sure that you're also getting that. Like, those days are the ones that you really need to be eating the 3 meals a day, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. Where's your protein? Where's your fats? It can't just be like the croissant. It has to be, you need to be nourishing your body, because then you're going to give your body the best building blocks for hormones and neurotransmitters too. And there's a lot of nutrients that I help people with, like, to take, because typically with estrogen, when it falls, it actually, serotonin falls too. So there's a correlation with anxiety and depression. That's why we feel it, because estrogen and serotonin, they all go down together. So a lot of women do need that serotonin to support before the period. And the way you can do that is, the diet is huge, because that's where we get the building blocks for building more serotonin. But there are targeted, like, nutrients like 5-HTP or tryptophan that you can take that can actually support that, for example. And there's others too, but yeah, those are amino acids that we get from protein. But I would say, first and foremost, like, just make sure you're eating the protein 3 times a day. And it's like 20 grams. So about the size of the palm of your hand. That's how much you want. So that's like 2 to 3 eggs. That's a lot. It's not just like the one. So
This is so interesting to me. So I have started in the last maybe only year or two paying a lot closer attention to how what I put into my body makes me feel, as part of my journey in trying to manage these sort of hormonal fluctuations and the PCOS issues. So incorporating more protein was a big part of it. I do a fair bit of strength training now, so that all fits together. But I've been doing the intermittent fasting because that seems to make me feel quite good. So I eat my dinner. I try not to eat again until kind of mid-morning, almost lunchtime the next day. But it's funny when you were saying how that's good and it helps a lot of people, but maybe don't do that the sort of week before your period or that last week. The funny thing is, I'm always hungrier that week, and I'm always thinking, like, why do I just want to eat all day? Normally I can manage this no problem. So that makes perfect sense. And I think maybe being armed with that knowledge, so that when you do hit that week and you go, I'm hungrier this week, you're just going, okay, well, that's normal. That's what should be happening, instead of kind of beating yourself up about what that means.
100%. Yeah. I mean, because then we start like, oh, why can't I do this? And you beat yourself up. And no, you actually need to shed a whole lining. You're going to lose blood. You have to build that up. I mean, so this is what's not happening in the conversations. Like, we talk about these health fads, but they don't like put it on the lens of a woman body. They just talk about it in terms of like a male body, like, because everything is geared in our society. It is all geared toward the testosterone bathed body. That is
Yeah. And so, and I think that is the perfect kind of transition into talking about how we then shape our work month, I guess, how we can perhaps tweak things so that on the weeks where we do have more energy and we are feeling more focused, we can do those bigger projects, and we can maybe have a busier schedule. And, obviously everybody's job is different. It's not always possible. But I think for me, if I were able to take that last week and have a quieter week and build in more flexibility, so that if I am having a tough day, I can go for a walk with friends for 2 hours. I did that yesterday and it felt great. Or, having a little bit more time for self-care, not filling every minute of every day with work on a week that is already going to be a little bit of a struggle. So, what you're saying about the world kind of being set up for the way that men's bodies work, I think that's so true. Everybody just expects that you can stay the same level of busy and achieve the same things all month long. And for most women, that's incredibly difficult and probably damaging to try to adhere to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we can do it, we all do it. We all show up and we work every day.
Yep.
But it's just nice to at least, I think, internally know, the more we have these kind of conversations, the more that we can start integrating it, and women will start to realize that it's okay. We were given this beautiful physiology for a reason, because we create life in our bodies, and that's not a small thing. Like, that's a big deal. So there's a reason why we have been given this different physiology, and it gives us all these different ways of seeing the world. It's a multi-directional kind of way to see the world. And we do have these superpowers. I mean, we're the ones who can have the babies and actually are usually the people that are running the household, and are able to keep all of these wheels and like spokes of the wheel going, because we can see it all. It's that is a superpower. So I think, I don't want to say that we can't work every day, but it's just to integrate more peace and calm into your daily, especially around those 2 weeks a month, like the week before and the week of your, period. So we just
So
have to be a little more. Mhm.
in terms of trying to, I guess, as you're saying, having these conversations and bringing this stuff more into the open is obviously, a starting point, because a lot of us were not educated in that way. All we were told is this is going to happen to you one week of the month, and that's it. And, I think that's maybe getting better now, which is great. But
Mhm.
obviously being armed with the knowledge first is a good starting point. But then what would you recommend then in terms of a next step? So trying to actually make some small changes in our lives to better serve the way that our bodies work. Is it helpful for people to maybe track for a month or two how they're feeling each day, so that they can get a feel for which times, because obviously everybody's cycle is slightly different. So, is that helpful in then trying to plan your work month around that? Or do you have any tips for sort of implementing
Yeah.
this stuff?
I think that that's a perfect way to start, is to just start number one. Yeah, get to know your cycle, get to know, like, start tracking your cycle. A lot of women don't do that. So that's like number one. Day one is the first day of your period. So just start noticing. There's so many apps, you can just put that in on your phone, or you can just get a little paper calendar or some little system, and just kind of check in, like, where you are on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
The first week, how does that feel? You will notice when you start to, whatever you put your attention on usually starts to expand, and your awareness around it grows, right? So if you're, okay, here you are on day one, and how does that feel? And kind of track your mood, but also I would say, like, your digestion and your skin and your sleep,
Mm.
um, and your motivation, like that energy piece, and kind of see, though, I would say those five things kind of going through, and then you could kind of come to the next week and just see, how is that feeling now? What kind of exercise too do you feel like doing too? Because that's also something to keep in mind. Um, Usually around the period, you don't want to be doing like a hit workout or running, which you can, but like, it's just a much more gentle time. So you want to be gentle with your body. So yoga and stretching and fast walking and, even swimming, those are all really great, and then the hit workouts and the more like, running, that would be the 2 weeks, like the week before your ovulation, the week after, that kind of thing. But just kind of, yeah, starting to track that, starting to like know where you are in your month.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. So doing, and I don't know, maybe you do it for a couple of months to kind of see. I imagine roughly you're going
yeah.
to get the same pattern, but and then from there, maybe implementing some of those changes, like you said, like, the exercise and the dietary stuff, but maybe looking at your month and, maybe you've got two major projects you need to get done. Maybe try and get the bulk of that done in those 2 weeks when you know that you're going to have
Yeah.
more energy. And I guess then, my follow-up question to you would be, what if, so for example, my other business is wedding and family photography. So I probably can't run a business in a way that I say
Yeah.
two
I know.
weeks out of every month, I'm not going to take wedding bookings, for example. So if I find myself in a time where I do have a busier than ideal week based on where I'm at in that cycle, is there anything that I can do to sort of,
Yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. And this isn't to say, like, don't work on those 2 weeks. I want you to work. Like, you can still show up and be a participating member of like of society and everything. But it's just about, I think it's just when you have this knowledge, then you don't have to be such the inner voice doesn't have to beat you up so much. I
Yeah.
think that that's really what we're struggling with, is that we are trying to keep up, and we try to, and we can, and we do, but I think really it's trying to have a kind, compassionate inner voice.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about, so that you can stay in your nervous system where you're feeling more at ease in your body. So
Mhm.
it's not to say that you can't work at all. Like, please go and do your projects. You'll just bring a different, more beautiful essence to those projects. I think the weeks that you are bleeding or the week before, you're going to just actually feel a lot more at peace if you can come at that within. If you can start to say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to approach this in a different way. It's not going to be so like go, 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 but I'm going to just, maybe it's a go with the flow, it's just much more.
Mhm.
I need to do, I'm just a big proponent of just noticing meditation. Meditation is just so important, I think, to just still your mind. Anything that you can just bring your mind back to the present, because a lot of times we're just all the time in the kind of, what are we going to do with these stressful thoughts? Our brain is actually addicted to stressful thoughts. We actually make dopamine every time we have a stressful thought. It's crazy. And those, every time we do that, then those neurons strengthen in your brain. So you want to do it again and again and again. But we really need to break that pattern and start to think, kind of like, just notice. It's just noticing when you're doing that. If
Mhm.
you're going in your day and you're thinking, oh, I have to do that, or I have to pay that bill, or I have to like do that thing, and you just, it just goes down the road, and but it just noticing, whoa, 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 nothing. Like, we're just here in this moment, this is all that's happening right now, and just noticing what's around you, what are the colors you see, what's actually happening, where are you at. That is just something to really keep in mind, I think, to keep track of our brain and where our thoughts are going, because thoughts are so powerful. And that's, I think, what I'm trying to say is just those 2 weeks. I think we have such a fluctuating neurotransmitter level, fluctuating hormones. So it is going to behoove us to really be more mindful about the thoughts. So whatever practice that can be for someone, that could just be taking a walk. You just need to do that more. You need to look at nature more. Just looking at a tree can help reset your nervous system.
Mhm.
But also just breathing, just noticing, maybe you take some deep breaths, maybe do that more in those 2 weeks. So it's not about shifting like your calendar and your work schedule. I just think it's more about having a inner dialogue. This is for you. This is for a female body to know about, because these can be superpowers, but you just need to know how to have that inner dialogue, so that we don't want to keep this negative self-talk going. We want to empower women. We want women to excel and exceed and be successful. So I think the more that you can be kind with yourself, then things change, things shift.
That's really
Mhm.
good advice, because I do think that's part of the problem. It's not necessarily I do find it harder to be busy those weeks, and I do feel like my energy's down and my mood's down and things. I do notice all of that. But as you say, you can usually kind of push through. But it is, as you were speaking there, I was thinking, I think the problem for me, and maybe for a lot of people, is you beat yourself up then. It's like, well, why can't I? Why can't I stay on top of all this? Why am I struggling so much this week? I'm weak. And looking at it that way, and perhaps you're right, it is more just about shifting that and expecting that things are going to feel a bit more difficult that week, and being time for your kind to yourself, and making time to, as you say, just sit with your thoughts or feel how you're feeling. I think we kind of forget to do that. A lot of us, life is busy, and it's easy to just kind of brush that stuff under the rug. So I like that idea of really, especially making time for it during those 2 weeks of the month.
Yeah, and I think I would just say you're much more sensitive. Like, you have an increased sensitivity. If you think about it in that way, that
Mhm.
could be your superpower during those weeks, because you do, you pick up more from your children. You'll understand. You can kind of see what they're talking about, or their feelings might hit you in a different way, or your partner, or just even, so it's like you're just noticing things in a different way, to reframe it, instead of being, it's not hard or difficult. It's just much more, you just have an increased antenna,
Mhm.
basically.
And
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to speak to you about there, you mentioned kids there. So I know you
Yeah.
said you've got two children who I think are both teenagers now.
Mhm.
I've got two young children. We've probably got a real mix of people listening. Some people's children are all grown up. But do you have any, I guess, perspective or advice on running a business and building a career while raising children at the same time? Is there anything that that you found particularly challenging or particularly helpful in that sort of scope?
Yeah, I would say I've involved them a lot in my business. Like they would come and help me when I've opened a clinic. They would come and I always involve them, like just help me move in, or they would just help with decorations and cleaning too. And and then I found it helpful, like those when they were little, like if they were sick, then I could just bring them to the office. They could just be like I'd have another room, or that was always nice to have that flexibility. And also, like it's just so nice to have your own business, because then you can take that flexibility. If they are sick, if you're sick, then you can also take time off. And just kind of rearrange your schedule, especially with like all the school holidays and summer vacations and all that. Like that's so nice to really be able to just, choose your own schedule. And now the flexibility too of just being able to work anywhere through the Zoom is so nice too. But
Yeah. The
yeah.
flexibility, I feel like, is, when I look at friends who have maybe two people working in very traditional 8 to 5
Yeah.
office sort of jobs, I think, I love the flexibility. I like that I can plan to be here when my daughter gets off the bus, and I can,
Yeah.
as you say, there's maybe less people to answer to when you do need to take some time off or deal
Oh
with
yeah.
sick kids or holidays. But on the other side of it, sometimes I feel it's quite difficult because there's no one to cover for me. So if
Mhm.
somebody's sick and I have to take a couple of days off, I don't have a staff member who can cover for me. It's me. So I think there's obviously pros and cons to it, but I totally agree with what you said about sort of including your children. Now, everybody has a different comfort level with that, of course, but I've found speaking openly about how hard it is sometimes to juggle the two things, and talking about some of those challenges has actually really brought me more of the kind of people that I want to work with and build a community of. I don't know if you found the same, but
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of my patients, my clients are a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of women that they're just working and they have kids, and yeah, so they, especially now, because my California practice, I'm working with my hours. I work with people as early as they want to meet because of the time difference. So I work with them at like 6 in the morning, and these are moms. They're like the moms love it. 6, 7, 8, before the kids are going to school. So that's been really, yeah. So I definitely attract that kind of population for sure.
so do you think then, or maybe think is the wrong word, because obviously you are coming at this from a sort of a medical perspective, but is there anything to be said about changes in the way that we function while we're pregnant, while we're breastfeeding, after we have become mums? Like, does that do anything to us sort of hormonally or in the way that our body processes information?
Completely, 100%. Your brain actually changes, and that, like anatomically, when you're pregnant, it starts to rewire. Um, the different sides of the brain will actually start to rewire, and especially when you're breastfeeding, once your baby is actually out, you have a much more heightened response to stress. So you actually can, and that's so that you will go to the baby when the baby's crying, so that you will feed your baby and the baby will survive. So that's why women can like notice, right away, like movement in another room. Like you can hear that. Like it's just like boom, and you're up. It's because your brain is literally changed. The wiring has changed, the neurons that are now traveling. It has to do with your most primitive center, your limbic system and your nervous system, the amygdala. And so that's our fight or flight. It's responsible for like, protect, safety. It's the ultimate. So 100%, your brain is changed. You are a different person when you come out of pregnancy. Like it's very different. So you're definitely on heightened alert. You also get a lot more oxytocin though. So, oxytocin is the love hormone that makes you feel in love. You get it when you hug someone, but also when you nurse your baby. And some women are really affected by that. Their brain can really just like go to sleep. So there is a lot more of, the sedation that can happen from oxytocin. So you tend to feel more drowsy, more fatigued, but you're also on alert. So like our brain changes because I think we're getting that huge hit of oxytocin too. And that is it's like an opiate. They basically have mimicked the structure of oxytocin for opioids. So it's like some women I've had in my practice, they will literally fall asleep when they're nursing. They can't even stay awake. And I've seen that. And it's because it is so powerful. It is so amazing. Like it's a beautiful thing, but it's a good thing. And I think, so then when you come out of the nursing phase, then you don't get that oxytocin as much, but you're still able to tap into it a little differently than pre-pregnancy. So you can then, those connections between your children or your partner, when you hug them, when you see them, those will grow and grow like in your brain because of that oxytocin that's being released. So it can be very comforting and kind of like you just feel like you want to cuddle up, and that's all like in there for a reason, it's evolution. So yes, you are definitely different.
And then so once you get out of that, you're not pregnant anymore, you're not breastfeeding anymore, your hormones, I guess, normalize. I don't know if that's the right word to
That's
use.
right. Yeah.
But are things still different? Because I speak to so many women, and I know for myself, I feel like my brain, I find it a lot harder to focus now. I forget things. Like my memory seems, and I don't know, is that just in my head? Is that just because I'm tired and I'm busier now? Or is there something physiological there as well?
Well, I mean, once you're out of the nursing phase, then you tend to go back to baseline, but your brain is forever changed. So it is different. It is different. But if there is that focus, then there is, then that's maybe something more like investigating what else is going on. Are you getting your 8 hours of sleep? At least 7. That's the big one. Usually it comes down to the sleep. And most moms, we're not really sleeping, 7 to 8 hours every single night.
Yeah.
So that's really, we need to work on nervous system support so you can have that inner voice speaking kindly to yourself. And then also the sleep piece, understanding that's usually where I start when I work with people, because when I work with moms, it's like, we need to understand what's going on with your sleep and why aren't you sleeping and what's going on. We want to try to knock out that wine. Don't do that before bed. And the wine coffee cycle, like that's happening for a lot of us. So gotta like talk about that and why, and what's going on. How can you get comfort in other ways? And part of that is also, it goes back to like knowing where you are in your cycle and also supporting your neurotransmitter levels. That's what I find a lot too. So how do we do that? Just making sure that your diet is dialed in. Like you've got to be eating protein and fats every single day, 3 times a day. You just do. Especially, I mean, I'd say in those first 10 years after having a baby, you really need to be on it. It's not just going to happen. Like these stresses that we're under these days, especially having your own business, you really need to take this as like number one priority, is your health, right? Like if you don't have your health, then you don't have much. So like that's, yeah, so that I would say. Mm-hmm.
So on that topic then of stress, because I think this is a problem for a lot of us, and I know whenever I've had blood tests done in relation to this PCOS stuff, my cortisol level's always off the charts. So, I've obviously done my own kind of research into this stuff as best that I can using Google and things, of different things that you can try. And so much of the advice is like, as you're saying, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating healthy, you're getting protein, you're exercising regularly. And I mean, I do all of those things. The sleep is maybe a bit iffy depending on what's going on with the kids and things. But in terms of stress specifically, is there anything else that people can do? Because I think probably everybody struggles with stress, whether or not their actual cortisol level is off.
Oh yeah, definitely. There is something called the polyvagal theory. Have you heard of polyvagal theory?
No.
Okay, so this came out about 15 years ago, and it's a way to describe like your nervous system and what it is and how you can actually retrain your stress response. So there's a lot of different brain exercises, like the one I was just talking about, where you can notice just being aware of like what's going on with your thoughts, just being aware and being here in the present. You start breaking these patterns in your brain of just going down the stress tunnel all the time. But there's many other ones. But there is there's a fantastic book I have right here called Anchored by Deb Dana. She's an expert in polyvagal theory. Highly recommend this book. Because the stress is, yeah, it's right here. This is like it's my world. I love talking about the nervous system because it's about the stress, because the stress isn't changing, but our way that we can respond to it and interact with our world and our stress, that's what we have control over. We can change that, So when you're talking about how do I deal with that cortisol, I mean, that's what it's going to take. And I think the more that we're bombarded with technology that does not have mindfulness dialed in at all, it's all about fast, 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 everything go on demand, then it's going to be really important for us to look at this piece of how do I settle my nervous system? How do I actually live in this chaotic world and not be just, I don't want to like mirror that, you know? So it is all those physical pieces, but it has a lot to do with your brain and how you're going to continue thinking certain thoughts or not. And so it is about meditation and being in nature and um, just trying to rewire your brain. Yeah.
So on that note, I think you have given us obviously quite a lot of a background and an awareness of maybe what's going on. And you've also given us some really good starting places to try and start tracking, you know, what's happening in our own bodies and how we're feeling. If somebody feels like they could use some extra help, how do you work with women? Like if I come to you and say, right, this is what I'm struggling with, what is the process from there?
Yeah, so I mean, I usually offer just a 30-minute, just kind of meet and greet discovery call. So I can tell you, here what's going on for you and get a little more background. And then I can tell you, how I would approach it. So generally, when I work with women, I'm working with you over 6 months.
Okay.
So I like to work with you once a month. We meet for about an hour. And in that hour, I'm really just kind of hearing the first session. I'm really just hearing your whole story, like from birth to now. I want to know infections you've had, where you've lived, traumas, everything. And then from that, I can determine what tests are going to be the best that we can do. So that could be blood, that could be adrenal, hormone, gut, genetics, toxins. I kind of give you the menu, but I'll definitely know which ones. Like I don't want to overwhelm you, but usually we start with maybe 1 to 2 to 3 tests to start. And then I'll give you some targeted recommendations, some targeted nutrients, usually for your brain, and then we'll start working on nervous system support. And then we start meeting every month. And I like to do that over the 6 months because then every 3 months, we have brand new blood every single 3 months, every 90 to 100 days. So whatever changes that you make at the beginning of that, we're going to see that in that 3 month kind of arc. And then also just tracking a woman, if we're dealing with hormones, I really want to see what's going on every single cycle, what's working, what's not working. So usually by the time we get to the 6 months, then we figured out a lot, and I've given you all those tools so that you understand like how to help yourself. And then after that, then I usually work with people. So most of the time I would say like 80%, 90% of the time we go to like year. Then I work with you quarterly, every 3 to 4 months. But some people still, we need to do more intensive. And some people, if they're really struggling with anxiety or like severe like PMDD or something, I'll be working with you twice a month over those 6 months. But for most people, I work with you once a month.
So it is quite customized. And I like that it's longer term because I think for a lot of people, when you go to, say, a GP, for example, and you get a blood test done and they say, this is the results of your blood test, we're going to put you on birth control or whatever. And we'll check back with you. Yeah, 6 months or a year, we'll see how you're doing. And it does feel very much like you're kind of just left on your own. So I kind of like this reciprocal back and forth check-in. And so you would just be kind of making recommendations and adjusting things and always monitoring to see what's working and what isn't.
Exactly. We usually retest, like after 3 months, if there's abnormals, then I want to make sure that we're getting it normalized, so yeah.
And do you find then in your experience, because I think you said you've been doing this for 17 years, so you've obviously seen lots of different women at lots of different stages in their life, lots of different issues. Do you feel that things like dietary changes, lifestyle changes, and awareness of what's going on, is that often enough for people to see quite significant changes in their life?
It can be. Yeah, I would say definitely it really can. I mean, it just depends if someone's already, maybe they've made all those changes already, and like we just tweak one or small things, then maybe not so much. If you're already doing all those things, then it's time to look at nervous system or what else, what are the other nutrients that you need? What medication maybe could be helpful? We need to bring in other pieces. But I would say yes, like for the most part, if someone's eating a very standard, we call it a standard American diet that's very inflammatory, fried foods and, or standard Scottish diet, we could say.
Yeah.
Like it's actually that just occurred to me. Like, and if they're, it's alcohol every day and it's coffee every day, then there's a lot of room for improvement there, so and that can really make a big shift in someone's life. You definitely will notice like less cortisol pumping through you all the time, less palpitations, better sleep, better digestion. So, and that, that can be huge for sure.
That is great. Well, thank you so much. I've learned loads, like for my own sort of, obviously I don't create these podcast episodes for me, but I think for my own kind of interest level, I think this stuff is so interesting. It's so top of mind. And I think we are living in a time where these conversations are starting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's great for our daughters and future generations. But I think a lot of us are stuck in this weird limbo where we didn't learn about these things and we are maybe on our own journey with it. But it can feel, I know so many people feel that they've kind of been let down or ignored or brushed aside by conventional medicine. So I think it's interesting to look at this from a more holistic, and as I think you said earlier, like a whole body approach. And, it's amazing to me that making changes, like all of those things are doable. Like, yes, it is hard to change your diet. It is hard to start exercising. All of these things are difficult at first, but they're all very doable. And I wonder how many of us are living with really difficult conditions and things that really negatively affect our everyday life that actually we do have the power to alleviate or at least improve upon just by knowing, having that awareness and recognizing what things are not helping us. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and
you're so welcome. I want to show you one thing. I have I created this deck of cards called Moon to Moon. So just so you know, I specifically made these for women to learn about their cycles so that you can actually get more in touch with the moon cycles and each, what they represent. And so you just kind of, they're all positive affirmations and you just take one a day. They're crystals and herbs and moon cycles. And this is, I am receptivity, waxing crescent. So you kind of get to learn the moon cycles with like different elements too. And there's a little book. And so, yeah, that's on my website. If anyone's interested, it's solsticecenter.co.uk. So that's solstice center, CENTRE.co.uk. So yeah.
That's perfect. That was going to be my next question, is to ask you, where can we find you? So I will put all of these links in the show notes, but for those who prefer the auditory kind of version of it, so that's your website, solsticecenter.co.uk.
That's right. Yep.
Perfect. And how about, do you use social media at all? Can we find you there?
Yeah. So Insta is solstice_naturopathic. And then Facebook is also, I think it's Solstice Wellness, I think it's Solstice Wellness on my, on the Facebook. I just got hacked, so I had to create a whole new one.
Oh yes, seems to be happening more and more, but that's great. I'll put those links in the show notes as well, so that it's easy for people to just click through and find you. Anything that we missed that you want to add in, or will we end our conversation there?
I think that's it. Thank you for those beautiful questions. That was really good. That was really helpful. And I hope this was helpful. And I'd love to work with more women here. So if anyone is interested, I'm happy. I work via Zoom and I work in person if people want to come to Edinburgh, but I do work wherever you're at. So
brilliant. Well, thank you so much, April. That was such an interesting conversation. And I'll look forward to kind of learning more from following you online as well.
That is all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something and found it helpful, or at the very least relatable. Please make sure that you like and follow the podcast on your favorite platform. It really helps us to keep going, and it helps you to make sure that you access new content as soon as it becomes available. And please tell your friends if you know anybody who you think the podcast would help or this episode specifically, so many of us struggle with our hormones at various points in our journey. And I think the more women that know that there is help out there and there is information out there that can make it a little bit easier on us, the better. Thanks so much for tuning in, and hope to see you next time.